The palace typically handles containment, and the three endgames King Charles is weighing right now. By the end, you won't just know what happened. You'll understand how to read the next 72 hours like an insider. Quick note before we dive in. Everything I'm about to discuss is based on claims and reporting currently under review. Treat them as allegations until independently confirmed. We don't do trial by internet here. We do receipts, chronology, and consequences. Here's the spark that lit the fuse. Report surface of files and photographs uploaded by a former aide, spreading across private channels within minutes. The documents purport to show dates, locations, and movements that clash with statements we've all heard for the last 5 years. Instantly, the palace narrative machine feels the ground shift.
Why?
Because timelines are kryptonite. If a timeline breaks, everything attached to it wobbles. Press guidance, legal language, and public trust. Pause there, because step one is always the same. Lock the timeline. What exactly is being claimed happened? Where and when? What's on record already? Interviews, transcripts, public appearances. Where do those two lines meet or miss? In a moment, I'll line those up so you can judge the delta for yourself. Now, the shockwave. The moment leadership sees images they didn't authorize and a storyline they can't script, the playbook kicks in. Triage communications, convene principles, isolate variables. That's why you hear about emergency meetings, cleared diaries, and suddenly unavailable for comment. It's not guilt, it's control. If you've followed major institutions, you know the pattern. Quiet rooms, few phones, and a short list of decisions nobody wants to make. Let's talk about the 3 questions that determine severity. First, contradiction. Do the new claims directly conflict with prior on-record statements? Second, corroboration. Is there third-party data, logs, witnesses, contemporaneous records that independently supports either side? Third, contamination. Does any security or legal risk bleed into government briefings, protected information, or classified access? If the answer to that third question is even maybe, the crisis graduates from reputation to state interest. That's when the temperature really rises. Now, the security layer, because this is where people get lost in the drama and miss the stakes. Association risk isn't just who stood next to whom. It's whether warnings existed, who saw them, and whether contact continued afterward. Intelligence services speak in probabilities, not certainties. So if an individual is flagged as high risk, the expectation is distance, measured, visible, provable distance. Anything else triggers briefings, questions, and an ugly calculus. Was this bad judgment, or did it cross a line with legal teeth? Meanwhile, optics are doing their own damage. At times like these, a single image can outweigh 1,000 well-worded statements. Pair that image with a cost of living crisis and a public already skeptical about privilege, and you get a combustible mix. Anger, fatigue, and the sense that accountability stops where titles start. That's how hashtags become movements and comment sections turn into referendums. Institutions don't fall because of a single scandal. They erode because the public decides the rules are different for the powerful. So what happens inside the palace when the wind shifts like this? 3 tracks run in parallel. Track 1, legal. Freeze exposure. Reconcile any sworn statements with the new allegations and engage counsel to map every risk line. Track 2, political. Loop in government so they aren't blindsided. Stability optics matter. Nobody wants global headlines suggesting constitutional chaos. Track 3, narrative. Decide whether to absorb, reframe, or amputate. That's brutal language, but those are the choices. Contain it, contextualize it, or cut it off completely. Let's map the decision tree King Charles is facing tonight. Option A, patronage purge and permanent distance. Strip formal roles, close offices, and the gray zone ambiguity. This is the save the crown even if the family bleeds route. It stabilizes the institution short-term, but it sets a precedent the palace has historically avoided. Public accountability over private loyalty. Option B, institutional transparency, limited but real. Commission an independent review of the specific timeline under dispute, publish the methodology, and accept the findings wherever they land. High risk, high reward. If the review validates the palace line, credibility spikes. If it doesn't, at least the process earns trust. Either way, sunlight resets the clock. Option C, freeze and wait. Say little, do less, hope the story fractures, gets messy, and loses attention. This has worked for decades in the tabloid cycle. But the media ecosystem has changed. Decentralized platforms don't move on until the audience does, and right now, the audience is locked in. Where does the heir apparent fit into this? Think of it as reputational forward defense. The modern brand of the monarchy lives or dies with the next generation. If internal voices argue that any lingering association costs the institution credibility with younger Britons, leadership has to choose. Protect the past or protect the future. History says the crown survives by pruning. Now, I want to arm you with a checklist to follow along without getting yanked by every headline. 1. Timelines. Any credible update must pin actions to dates and times and explain the data source. No timestamp, no trust. 2. Provenance. Who has the originals? Who verified them? Has any outlet with legal counsel published them in full? 3. Language. Watch for hedging verbs, reportedly, allegedly, understood to be. Hedging isn't bad, it's honest. But if a claim leaps from alleged to asserted without new proof, you're being sold a narrative, not facts. Point 4. Responses. Silence can mean coordination, not guilt. But when a formal denial names specifics, time, place, context, that's a marker. If that denial later changes, the story just escalated. 5. Spillover. Do financial markets react? Do senior politicians comment on record? Do law enforcement bodies acknowledge complaints or reviews? Those are external barometers that tell you how real the pressure is. Let's talk public sentiment, because this is the battlefield. When economic pain is high, tolerance for elite scandal is low. If you see support shift from reform around the edges to rip it out by the roots, leaders stop thinking in press cycles and start thinking in legitimacy. That's why you'll hear phrases like beyond reproach, the integrity of the institution, and confidence of the public. Those aren't cliches. They're the red lights on the dashboard. Legally, here's the knife edge. If any sworn statement is contradicted by independently verified evidence, the term you'll hear is exposure. Exposure to what depends on jurisdiction, exact wording, and whether the original statement sits inside a formal proceeding. Remember, public interviews can be reputationally lethal but legally irrelevant. Courts don't care about bad PR. They care about perjury, obstruction, and tampering. That's a very different standard. Security-wise, the biggest unseen risk is aggregation. A single meeting might be explainable. A single photo might be nothing. But a pattern after warnings? That's when intelligence services move the risk from monitor to mitigate, and mitigation inside a constitutional monarchy is a very polite word for make sure this can't keep happening. Zoom out with me for the power picture. The monarchy's survival mechanism across centuries has been adaptation, shrink when necessary, modernize when forced, and sacrifice pieces to save the board. The late queen embodied quiet continuity. The current reign faces loud discontinuity, social media, economic anxiety, political fragmentation. In that world, the institution either demonstrates standards higher than the public's, or it gets judged by the public's harshest standard. There's no middle lane anymore. What should you watch for next? 3 tells.